Before I start this video, if you've not subscribed to my channel, I appreciate it if you could hit that subscribe button. If you like the video, please click the like button, share this out through social media, and leave comments in the comments section. Today, I'm going to be reviewing the Amazon original film called The Bluff. It's basically a pirate adventure, and it only took me about 5 seconds to lose my immersion because the movie takes place in 1843, which is about 120 years past the golden age of piracy. Uh, and the last famous pirate that most people have heard of, named Blackbeard, was killed in 1718. And the British authorities in 1720 issued proclamations of pardon. They were basically amnesties for any pirate who chose to give up the life of piracy. As long as they didn't do anything bad moving forward, they were forgiven for past crimes. And any pirates who didn't accept this amnesty were basically hunted down over the next 100 years. So you can see why I basically didn't get into this movie. It's basically supposed to be based somewhat on reality, except it's based not in reality. All right, the first scene is basically a merchant ship called the Swiftsure. It's being overtaken in a storm at night by Captain Francisco Connor's ship, who is played by Karl Urban, and he was really the only good thing about this movie. And the Swiftshure's captain, Theodore Bowden, who's played by Ishmael Cruz Cordova. Yes, you know him from The Rings of Prime. Has a bar of gold with Connor's mark on it. Quartermaster Lee, played by Tamura Morrison. You probably know him from the Book of Boba Fett if you unfortunately watched that, or even Attack of the Clones. He finds out that the Swiftsure berths out of Cayman Brac, and Connor sets sail for there, taking Bowden with him and killing everyone else on the ship. And there's a little pirate trope for you: slaughter everyone. And of course, the main theme, or one of the main themes of this story, is a lost pirate treasure. Oh, such a new twist, huh, guys? Like I said, Karl Urban is really the only good thing about this. He doesn't have a lot to work with, but he delivers some pretty good one-liners. Ishmael Cruz Cordova is basically a lifeless plank of wood. And fortunately, he's not in the movie very long because he's just, I don't know who thought he can act, but he can't. And Tamura Morrison plays Tamura Morrison. He's the same, everything I've seen him in, he's exactly the same person. We then head to Cayman Brac. It's about 6 days after the first scene. And the colony is basically preparing to set off the Kirk Cornell to look for the ship's Swiftsure. And we end up at Bowden's cottage eventually, and we find out that Captain Bowden has a wife, a crippled son, and a sister living with him. His sister's name is Elizabeth, and is planning to leave with her boyfriend Weston the following morning. Basically, I guess they're going to elope. And his son Isaac is worried because it's been 59 days since the Swiftsure left. And Isaac's mother, Ursel, played by Priyanka Chopra, I hope I didn't mutilate that, says his father has always been late, but he always returns. Early the following morning, like 2-3 a.m., 3 pirates sneak ashore, and they barely miss Elizabeth leaving the cottage to go rendezvous with her boyfriend. Ursel hears Elizabeth leave. She doesn't see her leave, but she sees the pirates coming to the cottage, and she manages to hide Isaac underneath the cottage, underneath the floorboards, and arm herself before the pirates arrive. And there's a fight that ensues, but eventually they subdue Ursel and start asking her about Connor's gold. And the pirate named Scout actually leaves the other two pirates to deal with Ursel so he can go report to Connor. On the beach, the custode, I guess that's like an island custodian, maybe like the mayor or some sort of overseer, and he's black. Of course he is. Sees Connor on the docks and confronts him while the rest of the crew is seen rowing ashore in longboats. So basically, Connor, boy, he's got some stones. He goes there by himself, I guess, as a forwarding party. And I don't know, is he going to take the beach by himself? We'll find out. And we get a quick cut scene to Elizabeth going to her rendezvous with Weston, only to find out that the pirates were there first and they've slit Weston's throat. Back to the beach, and we have the local pastor whose name is Bradley. He notices Connor is talking to the custode and tells the harbor master to look toward the headland. He looks out over the water and sees the pirates coming ashore. They sound the alarm, and the pastor starts getting everyone into the church. I'm not sure why you're sending everyone to one location. In my opinion, if you're being invaded, you want everybody to scatter. The other two pirates, we cut back to the cottage, and they basically are hanging Ursel. One of the pirates happens to notice that Isaac is underneath the floor, at which point Ursel somehow manages to escape her hanging and kill both the men that are about twice her size in close combat. Oh boy, another girl boss. Thankfully, I was already apathetic to this show, so I really couldn't get any madder. I just don't care, and I really wanted it to be over at this point. Back on the beach, Connor starts to slaughter the defenders practically single-handedly. See, I was right. He's going to kill them all by himself. And there are some impossible long-distance shots from muskets in the longboats. I mean, this is like a couple of 100 yards away. And most muskets at the time had an optimal range of about 50 to 75 yards. So you're talking about shots at over twice that distance. And he's like picking people off. It just doesn't make sense. And at the same time, Connor, with his pistol, is making some equally impossible shots. And at the same time, there's at least like a dozen defenders. I don't know, maybe closer to 20. And every time they fire at him, they manage to miss. So Elizabeth, seeing that Weston is dead, decides to run to the beach. And she sees that the pirates have basically won at this point. And Connor kills the custode with the defender's cannons when he wouldn't give up Ursel's location. I gotta admit, this is a great shot. I mean, wow. First of all, shooting the guy in the back with a cannon, wow, at close range. And I mean, the way the body just explodes, the only thing I could have asked for is it was a faraway shot. It was basically from Elizabeth's viewpoint. I wish it would have been closer because it actually looked really cool. Anyway, after this happens, Scout turns up and tells Connors they've secured her cell. So Connor's going to start going to the cottage, and Pastor Bradley shows up there and basically gives away that Ursel, it was a captain once, and of course she was, because that's what a girl boss is. And they gather up some stuff, and then they decide to split up, with the pastor dragging Isaac in a wheelchair into the jungle, because Isaac's a cripple, if I hadn't mentioned that. And I'm sure dragging a wheelchair through the jungle will work out well. And Ursel goes looking for Elizabeth, and finds her while avoiding Connor and his men, who are, of course, headed to the cottage. Connor arrives at the cottage, turns the place upside down looking for the gold. They find nothing. And then he splits his men up into groups, telling them to find Ursel and to properly secure her this time. And put that in quotes. I thought that was kind of funny that he kind of emphasized that, since Scout basically effed up and let her get away. Connor, of course, finds the wheelchair tracks outside, and they start to follow them into the jungle. The pastor and Ursel end up meeting up in the jungle at the place they designated, and they have to use a makeshift raft to cross the river because of the caiman in the water. The caimans are like kind of a older form of alligator. That's the best way to describe it. They're kind of like dinosaur versions of alligators. And they're the reason the Cayman Islands are called the Cayman Islands. Anyway, so they have to use a makeshift raft. Everybody's across except the pastor when Connor and his men arrive. We find out Pastor Bradley was actually one of Connor's crew, and Connor shoots him in the leg when he refuses to give up any information and tells him to keep praying while blessing himself. I thought that this was one of the only scenes I laughed out loud about, that I was meant to laugh at. I thought this was funny. I thought the deadpan delivery by Urban was perfect. I mean, like I said, he was the one good part of this, but he definitely couldn't make up for the rest of this shit. Anyway, so Ursel, who made it across, sends Elizabeth and Isaac onto the Bluff. I guess it's a series of caves, and thus the name of the show. And she doubles back to try and help the pastor. The pirates end up spotting Ursel in a tree and try to shoot her. They actually shoot her out of the tree, but they don't hit her. The pastor shoots one of the pirates in the back, and Connor finishes him off with another shot from his pistol. Connor calls out Bloody Bloody Mary, which apparently was her pirate name, and tells her son she is the real danger. There's a bit of bartering that goes on, but Connor finally reveals that he has Theodore Bowden, Ursel's husband, and there's an agreement that they'll exchange the gold for Bowden. And this happens after the pirates fail to ford the river because a couple of them get chomped on by caimans. By the way, just from a logical standpoint, they shouldn't have caught up to them so fast. Even with the cripple, they were moving at a good pace. So you should have wondered why they stopped at the river. And it probably wouldn't have been a good idea to wade through water you can't see through. It's really murky because there might be something in them, like the reason the islands are named the Cayman. I thought that was a stupid thing to do. Connor's supposed to be a really experienced captain. He should have known better. He shouldn't have sent a couple of his men into that river to die. Eventually, they make it to Ursel, Elizabeth, and Isaac make it to the caves in the Bluff. And it's basically been decorated to look like a ship. I assume this was the ship she used to own as a captain. And also we get some background on herself, from herself and Quartermaster Lee. They kind of cut back and forth. And apparently she was this huge terror. Oh, God, yes. Yes. The woman is the terror of the high seas. And once that's over, they bring Captain Bowden to the cottage. And Ursel explains that, yes, she stole the gold, but it was supposed to be for Isaac's inheritance. because it was too dangerous to spend with Connor's mark on it, which is the reason they found it in the first place. And I'll explain how that happened in a minute. But because it's got Connor's mark on it, as long as Connor's alive, he's going to go looking for this. Anyways, in addition to all the gold and all this other stuff, there's an extensive armory there. And Ursel grabs some makeshift hand grenades and some more weapons. And she also is seen lining the box that she's going to put the gold in with guano, which is batshit. Back at the cottage, Connor kind of hints to Lee. First of all, Lee is wondering, are we still on mission here? The gold's still the mission, right? And Connor says, well, my head's straight. But he also infers that Bloody Mary is kind of the key to their freedom. And then Connor goes in and talks to Bowden, tells them about their past relationship and the fact that they used to bump uglies. At which point, Mary comes out of the well. She puts some grenades out. I guess she's going to use them like mines or something. And she kills a few of the pirates. She tries to free Bowden and confesses to banging Connor. He admits he took the gold bars to try and buy a doctor for Isaac, so it was his fault. He got caught. They weren't supposed to ever use the gold, and he tried to, and look what happened. And the pirates use this signaling system. It's a whistle and some stuff. So when some of the pirates don't answer the whistles because they've been killed by Mary, they know something's afoot. They all go out, and Mary is by the well. And there's a bit of exchange between her and Quartermaster Lee. Quartermaster Lee finally orders one of the pirates to go grab her, and she sets off one of the grenades and blows up the pirate. Ursel brings the gold up from the well, and Connor marches out Bowden. Before the exchange is complete, a fight breaks out. Connor ends up killing Bowden. Lee shoots Mary in the leg and drops her. Connor admits he only wants Mary, and he wasn't interested in the gold. And Mary, obliging him, blows up the gold and a few of the pirates with it, and it's including Lee's son, and then she crawls back down the well. It looked like a pretty bad wound to the leg. I just, and these are... Never mind, I'm just going to keep going. So while this is going on, Elizabeth and Isaac are into Mary's journal, and they find out a lot of what happened to her, including Connor basically captured her from a slave vessel and, basically find out that she's lived a pretty shitty life. At this point, Lee is completely pissed off. He basically tries to relieve Connor of his command, and Connor shoots him dead. And then Connor informs the remaining pirates that if they capture and turn Mary over to the authorities, they will receive lifetime pardons, which are worth far more than gold. And to a certain extent, he's not wrong about that. So all the pirates agree that they're going to get Mary. So Mary returns to the cave and tells Elizabeth and Isaac that their father/brother is dead, and that the pirates will eventually find the tunnel and they need to be ready to fight. And Connor basically is in the tunnel system, and he gives his men the order to bring Mary back, dead or alive. And here's the stupid part. You're going into a set of caves, someplace that Mary knows very well. If she's this great captain that everyone thinks she is, then she's going to have traps. She's going to have bottleneck points. she's going to be able to do a lot of damage. So I don't know what the point was of going into the cave. I would have just waited her out. You got supplies, you've got the town. What she got in there? You can wait her out. She eventually will either starve to death, die from dehydration, or something will happen, or she'll try and come out and you can gun her down. Of course, in these movies, plot armor is pretty thick, so even if she came out, they'd probably all miss her, and she'd probably just kill them all with their sword anyway. Anyways, they don't listen to me. All the pirates go in. None come out except Connor, who goes up to the top of the bluff and lights the signal fire calling for the British to come. So he's calling for British reinforcements. That's a pirate for you. Isaac is told to take the cat boat out, so he's safe. He takes it out, and while he's sailing, he loosens one of the floorboards and sees that there's a whole bunch of gold bars hidden in the false bottom. So Mary didn't blow up all the gold after all. And we go back up to the top of the bluff, and we get the trope final one-on-one battle between the protagonist and the antagonist. And I think we can all guess who's going to win. I mean, every time they sword lock, Connor could have easily shoved her to the ground and probably killed her. I mean, he's got 7 inches and 50 pounds on her. That's plenty of leverage. She shouldn't have stood a chance in this fight. I don't care how skilled you are as a swordsman. It's the laws of physics here. And during the fight, Connor actually has a couple of opportunities to kill her, but he wants her to yield. Of course, the bad guy trope. The bad guy won't kill the good guy, which is kind of funny. Wouldn't that be reversed? The good guy wouldn't want to kill the bad guy, but, And anyway, he finally decides that Mary isn't going to yield, so he's got her dead to rights, and he's about to stab her through the heart, which is what Mary tried to do to him earlier, which is kind of the reason why he's pissed off at her. On top of stealing all his gold, she almost stabbed him through the heart, and he's got a little scar with her name over the scar tattooed. We see that during the movie. Anyways, at the last possible second, Elizabeth shows up and shoots Connor in the shoulder. Of course, a last-minute reprieve, allowing Mary to get to her sword and kill Connor. Yeah. Go, girl boss. Anyways, at this point, Mary reveals that her real name is Miriam. Kind of makes sense, doesn't it? And she reveals that to Elizabeth. And somehow all the townspeople know that it's safe to come out. So they start ringing the church bell and everything. And they look like they're starting to celebrate. So somehow they know all the pirates are dead. I'm not sure how. And then the scene in the movie ends with a small British fleet sailing towards the island because they can see the pyre that was lit by Connor. Basically, there's nothing new about this movie. There's nothing exciting about it. There's a bunch of recycled Hollywood tropes regarding pirates and piracy. Large fortunes that rarely, if ever, existed. I mean, it's not the same exact story, but it's pretty close to the story and just as ridiculous and boring as Cutthroat Island, if you remember that one with Matthew Modine and what is her name? And I'm drawing a blank. Geena Davis. The only difference is you didn't have Geena Davis's ass wrapped up in tight leather this whole movie. Not that it would have made it a whole lot better, but at least it would have been something to look at. Basically, there were only 2 privateers in the history that I know of piracy that accumulated large amounts of wealth. One was William Kidd. He's where we get the buried treasure trope from. Pirates didn't bury their treasure. Most of the time, they barely had enough to basically survive on, which is why they kept always going back to piracy. You'd get enough to buy some alcohol and buy a woman and some food, and then you were right back to pirating again. Anyways, he did bury some of his treasure. He never really got to enjoy it because the British government hung him. And the other one was Henry Morgan. Now, if you look over my left shoulder, you can see a sloop back there. It's a 6-gun sloop. It is an accurate representation of Henry Morgan's first privateer vessel. It's probably worth about $4,000 these days. I bought it for about $2,500 back, 15, 16 years ago at this point. It's really cool. I love it a lot. That's why it's on display back there. Henry Morgan, he was knighted. He retired to Jamaica. He had some government posts for a while, and he had 3 sugar plantations. He lived to the ripe old age of 53, and he was killed by consumption. If you don't know what that means, it's basically he was an alcoholic and he killed his liver. All right, I thought the whole black hood thing, a lot of the pirates in this movie like had black hoods and were dressed in black, and that was just simply retarded. Pirates didn't dress like ninjas, okay? It's stupid. First of all, they wouldn't have wanted hoods over their heads at all. They want to be able to see. So having a black hood over your head just doesn't make any sense. I didn't think the cinematography was too bad. Like I said, I thought the cannon scene was actually pretty cool. I would have liked the close-up, but whatever. The script was really bad. It's very predictable. I mean, I had the whole plot figured out in less than 5 minutes. I kind of figured out where things were going to end up, or who was going to be fighting who, and yada, yada, yada. So it made watching the whole movie painfully boring. I mentioned Urban had a few good lines. I thought Chopra was boring and stiff. She didn't look comfortable. I don't know if this woman can act. This is like the first thing I've seen her in. But this is definitely not something she should be acting in this realm, this genre. She doesn't fit. And by the way, Indian pirate women. Okay, you get just guess how many female Indian pirate captains there were in the Caribbean during the whole time of piracy, from let's say the 1500s to the 1800s. Just guess how many there were. 0. Not a 1. Zip. Nada. Fuck me. Okay, and another complaint. I got a rated R pirate movie with no tits and ass. That's criminal. Come on, give me something here. You're not giving me anything else. Give me a little tit and ass. One more note. The Russo brothers actually produced this dumpster fire. So good luck with Doomsday, guys. Yeah, I'm enthused for Doomsday, even more than I was before. And finally, this is 100 minutes of my life that I can't get back. And with that, I'm going to end this review. So like my father told me when I was 18 years old, get out.